Okay, hi everybody. Welcome again to the Tech Cafe. My name is Shana, and I'd like to welcome you to this last session of our special mini-series on accessible technology presented by the Ottawa Public Library's Tech Cafe. The Tech Cafe is a weekly and sometimes twice weekly series of presentations designed to increase your knowledge and interest in technology. This presentation is called Options for Obtaining Assistive Devices and Technology and will be given by Steve Crane on behalf of Ottawa Foyer Partage's ComputerWise program. Steve Crane has spent over 20 years as a support worker for people with disabilities and has a lifelong interest in technology and making. He is a strong believer in the power of technology to change people's lives for the better and is working to increase the presence of people with disabilities in maker culture. ComputerWise is a not-for-profit program that aims to support adults with disabilities in using computers, mobile devices, and other technology to increase their independence and participation in community, employment, and recreation activities. Before I turn the session over to Steve, I would like to let you know that your microphones have been turned off to ensure the best sound quality. You will not be able to unmute yourselves. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat window at the bottom of your screen. Thank you very much for attending this online program presented by the Ottawa Public Library, and I will now turn the session over to Steve Crane. Steve, it's all yours.
Right on. Hi everybody, welcome, and in some cases, welcome back. I do want to say one more thank you to the Ottawa Public Library for letting us do these workshops these last few weeks. I've had a great time, and I really hope that you've had some fun as well, and that we have provided some useful information. So those sessions are going to be on the Ottawa Public Library's YouTube page. They covered the first steps and considerations in looking for assistive technology and the settings that are already available on Android, iOS, and Windows devices. Today, we're going to get a bit more specific. We're going to look at some examples of hardware and software from open source and retail providers. We're going to take a more in-depth look at some avenues where you can look for assistance with this stuff. And we're going to finish off by looking at a couple of custom pieces that we have made in-house for our participants at ComputerWise. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll have a solid overview of the types of devices that are available and maybe have some pointers as for where to look for things to help yourself or people that you are caring for. So we're going to start with retail products. To briefly reiterate what we said before, there are some ups and downs to retail products. Generally, they're going to be more expensive, and often they're going to be less flexible, less customizable. You'll have companies that don't want you changing their tech, so things will be proprietary. You can't change anything or it'll void your warranty, considerations like this. The plus side of retail products is that you can generally rely on a certain level of resources after you buy them. You're going to have a warranty, you're going to have customer service avenues that you can pursue. And also, particularly for assistive devices, healthcare professionals that you work with are more likely to be familiar with retail products that have a large footprint as opposed to one-off custom solutions or open source things that you kind of have to go looking for. So there'll be a greater level of comfort there, and maybe more familiarity and they can be of more help with those. For specifics, we didn't really touch on one disability. I noticed kind of reviewing the other workshops we did. We only glossed over difficulty with communication. If you don't speak loudly or clearly or at all, it can be very difficult. That can be a severe impediment in your life, and there are a lot of tools out there to help with that. So we're going to look at a couple of retail tools there. Augmentative and alternative communication. It's actually an entire field. It's very in-depth. If you need a full-fledged AAC solution, your best bet is to go through basically channels, talk to your doctor, get referred to a speech language pathologist. If you need help with the input side of things, sending commands to a device, an occupational therapist will probably get involved there as well. But for the moment, just to sort of get your feet wet, generally speaking, you're going to be looking at high-tech and low-tech varieties. Low-tech is basically usually going to be a grid of cells on a booklet or a board that have words or pictographic symbols on them. You can point at those to indicate what you're saying to somebody, or there are schemes where, control schemes where somebody can help you narrow down the choices if you can't make those indications yourself. They'll point to rows and then columns, or the board will be divided by sections, things like this. You can see a couple of limitations here right off the bat. First off, space is a huge limiting factor here. For these cells to be large enough for you and the person assisting you to see, you're only going to be able to carry so many words. Memorizing the layout of them all can be a challenge as well. And of course, the other person has to be standing close enough to you to see them, which can be a challenge when you're, I don't know, in the middle of a global pandemic and everyone's supposed to be 6 feet away from each other at all times. So that's why some of the high-tech solutions came along and have been very strongly embraced in over the last, say, 15 to 20 years. They tend to be installed on a device, so they don't take up any space, particularly nowadays when people will carry these devices as a matter of course. They have verbal output, whereas you choose your words and the machine speaks for you. So, of course, that's great if somebody's not standing close enough, or if the person you're communicating with has their own issues with literacy or vision. Of course, the downside of these things is generally they're going to be expensive. So I will stress again, for a substitution, alternative communication as opposed to augmentative, definitely is something that you want implemented by professionals, and be prepared for a bit of a lengthy process there. However, AAC is a component of a system. It's not a system itself. You don't have to use it all the time. Some people will have an AAC tool for a specific use case only. For example, someone might carry a board with some health-related questions and pain charts and symptoms and things like this. Because day to day with the people that are around them, they communicate fine. If suddenly they find themselves hospitalized, the doctors and nurses who don't know them as well may have more difficulty, so they'll carry a tool specifically for that purpose. People get to choose the extent to which they use these tools. The retail tools in this area tend to be very, very expensive. I'm not going to do much of an on-screen demo because really they're more specialist tools, and you tend to be using them. Oftentimes it'll be a professional using them and then giving you the results. One of the larger tools for making low-tech communication aids is called Boardmaker. It costs $200, that's US dollars. And basically, yes, it lays out the cells. You can style them with colors and outlines and borders. They have some copyrighted symbol sets that you can use for pictographic communication. And then the end result, you print it out and you carry it with you and use it as your AAC tool. For these sorts of tools, especially for limited use cases, so those symbol sets can be very useful because they are standard and professionals will always be familiar with them. However, this can be an opportunity to look at the DIY side of things. Somebody who needs a communication tool for a specific purpose may actually enjoy and have more investment in using a tool that they help make themselves. So you can do this on all sorts of free graphics programs like Inkscape, or I think Pixlr is an online web-served one. Somebody could make their own communication tool using pictures from magazines and things. So low-tech tools like that can be made, and they can have a very strong impact on someone's life because they get to take more ownership of them. I'll also say, you know what, having used Boardmaker, for the money that it costs, I have found it's not really intuitive enough for me. It doesn't really work as smoothly as I would like it to. So I'll just leave that there. On the high-tech side, there's a program called Grid3, and this is basically the same sort of thing where it will allow you to lay out your cells, and then it will display them on your touchscreen device or on your Windows screen, and you can select them in one of various ways. You can use the touchscreen. It supports switch scanning, which we've spoken about and are going to speak about more right now on this slide, and eye gaze and all sorts of cool input technologies that folks don't have a ton of familiarity with. So switch scanning is basically if you only have one button to control your machine, The first time you press it, a line will start tracking down from the top. When it reaches the level of the thing you want to click, you press your button, that line will freeze in place, and then another line will make its way across from the edge of the screen. When it's on top of what you want to click, you press it again and it sends the command to that area. So if you have a very limited range of motion or options for sending commands to a device, it can be essential. Grid 3 supports all of these things, as well as we'll talk a little bit later about eye gaze and head tracking and some cool technology like that. And the other real big advantage Grid 3 has is it can send these commands to other things. So Grid 3 can send commands to your Windows device. Windows does not natively support switch scanning. So that can be a very big challenge for Windows users if you're used to this technology on your mobile device. You get on your computer and you don't have it anymore. So Grid 3 can fill that gap. It can send commands from a device that has the appropriate hardware. It can send commands to TVs. It can send remote control signals, so TVs, stereos, and whatnot. And it connects to your Wi-Fi, and you can control some home automation projects with it. Beyond the communication screens, page sets, with Grid 3, you have a lot of options of pages that will send these commands and use your grid to control different devices. So that does a lot of work. It does it fairly well. Grid 3 actually costs $975. So if you don't have $975, there are AAC apps that are available for the Android and iOS platforms. For AAC, those platforms have a much bigger footprint for those sorts of apps, because that's usually something that you're going to want to carry with you. You know, a communication program that sits on your computer while you're out in the community doesn't really help you very much. So you'll find a lot more of them available for the devices that you're more likely to have on you. So yeah, switch scanning. And so the Android and iOS apps, mainly they are going to be cheaper. Some of them are still going to be in the hundreds of dollars range. You'll find some in the 20 to 50 range. Some will be free, but with certain features disabled. The downside of them is they're often not going to be as powerful or less flexible or less customizable. And this is when you get really deep into AAC, you really want things that are customizable, because you want the user to be able to communicate the way they want to communicate. A third-party screen reader. So we talked a lot about screen readers last week. I'm not going to really talk much about screen reader apps for iOS and Android, because really, I haven't really found any that work better than the accessibility features included in the operating systems. So Select to Speak and TalkBack on Android, Spoken Contents, and the other one on iOS, I can't remember the name of it right now. They all actually do the job really well, and I haven't found anything else that works better. So we'll move right on to Windows, because Windows Narrator is a bit less robust. It's a bit more, it's a bit less intuitive to use. You don't have as much control over it. So Windows is the platform where you may well need something else. There is a program called WordQ. Basically, it does three things. It gives you a window with predictive text. So basically, as you type a word, it'll put up a list of words that you can click on whichever one you like. If you highlight text in any Windows app, WordQ can read it for you. And if you have a microphone or a microphone-enabled device like a webcam connected to your computer, you can dictate text using WordQ. These are the three things it does. It does them well enough. The only gripe I have with it is that those things are all done on mobile platforms for free, and WordQ costs about $100. But it is an option. I know a lot of people who use it, and they generally find it meets their needs. So we're getting through software pretty quick here. Input software, as I said in previous sessions, you have a lot of different on-screen keyboards, so you can shop around a bit if the one you have doesn't fit your needs. Some will have different color schemes available, will have more or fewer buttons, their own little predictive text windows. Some will have the ability to record like macros, a series of keystrokes, and then assign them to one key, which if you have dexterity issues can be a very important thing in Windows, because it relies a lot on pressing more than one key at a time for a lot of functions. But now let's move on to switch scanning. So switch scanning, there are two apps for Windows that sort of fill this void because the Windows operating system currently doesn't. One is called Cross Scanner. It costs about $100. And the other is called One Switch Mouse. It costs about $20. I haven't actually used either of these programs. I've just sort of looked into them because, you know, and at our program, we're basically not often going to buy these things until we know we need them for someone. If I was going to buy one to play around with, of course, the cheaper one seems to be the way to go. From what I can see, they both do exactly the same thing, the exact format that I've described on the slide. But with switch scanning gets to be an expensive proposition for Windows because, of course, you have to buy the software, and then you have to buy the actual button to press, and then you also have to buy an adapter. It's not a case of plugging the button into your computer in a lot of cases. You have to plug it into this other box and then plug that other box into your computer. So especially if you're going with retail products, this gets to be pretty expensive. The last piece of software I'm going to cover for Windows on the retail side is called SteadyMouse. This is, oh, sorry, I will try and speak up. So SteadyMouse is a program for people who have a lot of involuntary motion in their hands. If your hand shakes while you're using a mouse, of course, it's going to be hard for you to target an area of the screen and click it. What SteadyMouse does is it takes those motions, the input from your hands, and averages it out so that if your hand is shaking, you still get a very smooth path for the cursor on the screen. It retails for $50, or if you're a big believer in it, $150 will get you a lifetime subscription to it. So you also have access to any further versions of the program that come out in the future. So I think he's already on SteadyMouse version 3. So if you think he's going to make more than 2 more versions of this program in his lifetime, and this is the program that will help you, then it might be worth forking over that $150. So all of these products, all of these programs are going to be, the links to their websites are in the info package for this session. You'll be emailed that afterwards. So now we're going to be talking a bit about hardware. So there is, we have a demo screen set up so I can show you some things. When I'm going to hop over there and we will show you some of those. So to start with, we are going to be looking at some things that can help you out with your wireless devices. You may have seen my little toy box behind me. So first up, wireless chargers are absolutely great. You need to have a device that supports it, not all do. But if you have difficulties with dexterity or vision, getting those little plugs into your device can be very difficult. Making sure it's the right way, it can be hard to see. And some of the ports can be very fragile and easy to break on top of it. So these retail, I've seen them in the $30 to $40 range. It's just a plastic platform. If you take a device that has wireless charging capability, all you have to do is place it on top, and you'll hear a tone when you know you have it in the right place, and your device will just charge. Easy as that, never have to worry about those cables again. So that can be very, very useful for not a big outlay of money. We had a question in a previous session about cases. So this is actually my Surface Pro that I use for working remotely. This is a very rugged case. It military rated. I'm not sure if that actually means anything or not. I'd have to actually look into it. But it's a firm case. It's got a stand in the back so I can stand the device up. And that can also double as a grip for holding it. So it can help you keep from dropping your device as well. Another variation that you see for a lot of people with dexterity issues is something like this. So very thick padding all around and a handle. You can also loop a necklace or a lanyard through that so that someone can wear the device around their neck so that if they do drop it, it's still not going anywhere. So we have been talking a fair bit about switch access. So here's the switch. Basically a button like this. You can see this one's pretty big, about the size of my hand. They come in different sizes. You can get Bluetooth ones that skips over your adapter problem, but then 1, you have to replace batteries, and 2, the Bluetooth ones are much more expensive. You can see the connector here is a 3.5 millimeter. So that's the same sort of connector that you'll see on your headphones. but it doesn't actually use the headphone jack on your computer or your mobile device. So that's why you need these adapter boxes that'll have a USB cord coming out of the other side. So that, in conjunction with another box, will be what we're looking for there. And let's see, where are we at here? Switches, keyboards. So of course, for computers, a lot of issues with using the keyboard. So here's an example of an assistive keyboard. You can see we have a nice high color contrast. The keys are slightly larger than an average keyboard, but you can actually get ones that are significantly larger than this. You can get keyboards that have the keys laid out in an ABC format instead of the QWERTY format that we normally use. And another accessibility tool for those is a key guard. What the key guard does is you lay it on top, it's a plastic shield, so that instead of having to hover over your keyboard and press keys, if you have dexterity issues or a variety of other things that may affect your ability to type, or if you're using a pointing device, you can run your hand across the surface until you hit the letter you want and then press down through. So most companies that make assistive keyboards will also sell key guards for them. If you're using a standard keyboard, then stay tuned for towards the end when we talk about custom devices. Speaking of pointing devices, here's an example of one. This is basically a rig that somebody wears on their head. It's got some padding there, some adjustable length for those things for fit. And on the other end, a tip for, actually this is used by the gentleman who uses the keyboard that I just showed you. That in there. So nowadays, of course, you'll see a lot of the variations on this where the tip will be a stylus that can be used with a touchscreen. They also come with variations that attach to a cuff so that you can use it with your arm if your fingers don't hold it very well, or on a longer stick that you can use with your mouth. And that brings us to, oh yes, also speaking of keyboards, we talked last week about the mouse keys feature in Windows. Mouse keys being the ability to use the numeric keypad on your keyboard to move your mouse. So you can just press a button and have it go in one direction. If you use that function, but you don't really type and don't need an entire keyboard, this isn't really an assistive device. These are about 30 bucks at Staples, but that's just a free-floating numeric keyboard that you can use with mouse keys to move your mouse around. Now, more with mobile devices or switches or other things that you may need to have mounted around you. So this is the strongest concern for people who use wheelchairs because your mobility is limited and you need to be able to reach things. You're not necessarily going to have a lot of flexibility and ability to go reaching behind yourself or reaching things on a table. But it can be an important concern for other people as well, just having things where at your desk where you can get at them, holding something in a position where you can see it, various considerations. There are, of course, assistive mounting rigs that are dedicated, custom made and measured. They are very expensive, up in the thousands of dollars range. If you're looking for a cheaper alternative and you think you might not need something on that level, I would first recommend you look at home studio equipment. Because there's been such a boom lately in people making content for YouTube or Twitch or what have you, there are lots of mounting arms available for webcams and lights and microphones that can be very easily adapted to hold switches or mobile devices or other things in positions where you may need them. So there's the top tier, that mid tier, and now another version. This is the first specific product I'm going to talk about. I want to do a bit of a caveat here. I'm not advertising anything today. Nobody has, of course, nobody's asked me to plug their stuff. So anything I'm mentioning is really only in the context of this is a thing I know of that exists that you can look into and see if it meets your needs. That said, if I do mention any specific products made by a company, it's because I actually really appreciate that company's approach to these issues as much as the product itself. So this is a product called Lockline. Originally, it's an industrial product. This flexible tube was used for sending coolant, air or water, to the cutting surface of a machine. It was pointed out that there were lots of accessibility applications for this, and the makers of Lockline, the inventors of it, had the opportunity to put out a line of assistive products, and then of course charge three to five times as much, which is what usually happens in this situation. They declined that opportunity, and you can buy the assistive version of Lockline for just about the same price as the industrial version. So here's why it may be useful. So these plastic links can be snapped off and put back together at any length, as many as you want, so you can get the precise length that you need. And once you have them together, you can bend it into any shape at all, and it'll just stay there. Now, in my experience, they are definitely strong enough to support a phone. If you want to use them with a tablet, you may want to make a rig where you use two of them, because that's around where the weight tends to cause it to bow a little bit. And then they turned around and did release a few accessories. So they have a few different options for mounting it to a surface. So you see here just a spring clamp you can clap onto the edge of a desk or table. And then for the other hand, they put out a few mounts for tablets, phones, other things that you may well need on the other end of the line. You can also use them particularly for a wheelchair user who has a drink mounted in a different place on their chair. You can use this to run a straw through, like a PVC straw. So the fact that they could have charged a lot of money for this and ended up not doing it in the interest of helping people makes me feel pretty good about that company. All right. And then, of course, when we come to the mouse, you have a few different versions of variations on the mouse available. You have some that are different shaped, some where you can hold your hand up instead of flat. You'll have some that have a trackball on them. So you have a few options for mouse input as well. Now we come to the Xbox Adaptive Controller. This came out a couple of years ago for use with the Xbox gaming console. It gives you 4 direction pads, 2 large buttons, and these buttons can actually be, I think, retasked to do other things as well. So it is great for accessible gaming because actually video games can be a very important tool for inclusion for people with disabilities. But also in conjunction with a free program called Joy2Key, you can use this to control a Windows device. Because not only do you have the controls on it, you have about 20 jacks for those switches that I discussed earlier that you can plug them into the back. You can connect joysticks, buttons, steering wheels, all sorts of different things. And then using Joy2Key, you can map those inputs to Windows tasks. You can have them type keyboard keys or do mouse movements. So this kind of works around that idea for a switch adapter. It works as one of those. It's got a few switches built into it, and it's made by Microsoft. So it integrates very well in a Windows environment. And this is another situation where a standard Xbox controller costs like $80 or so. This costs $130. So there is a price bump there, but considering the amount of effort that went into the design, it's not as much as you would expect if you really follow things in this field. So the Xbox Adaptive Controller. So one more retail product to cover as far as Windows input devices go. Here we're getting the real high-tech stuff. This is an eye gaze camera. So this is for complete hands-free operation of a Windows device. You can actually use it with mobile devices as well. I don't know if they sell variations that are smaller but I know that eye control is something that does exist on those platforms. So how this works is it actually has an infrared camera and it shines an infrared light on your face. The camera catches the reflections of that light in your eyes and uses that to plot what you're looking at. So once this is calibrated, it can be a bit finicky. You have to make sure you're sitting in the same spot every time, things like that. But once it's calibrated and working, basically you look at your screen and it will click where you look. So absolute 100% hands-free. As an assistive device, this is still very expensive. We're talking thousands of dollars. It recently gained some traction in the video game world. So there's a retail version, which is what we're looking at here, which is in the $500 range. So that is another option that can be looked at for hands-free operation of Windows. So that covers all of our retail stuff. So now we're going to start looking a bit more at open source products. Sorry, I'm just checking the time there to make sure I know where I'm at. So on the software side, there are some AAC options, like I said. Seaboard is a free Windows AAC platform. It's actually made on Google. So it uses basically Google Docs and Google accounts to store the info. A less precise, I don't even want to say less precise, an alternative to iGaze. So iGaze is still very specialized technology. A less specialized version of that uses a standard webcam. It doesn't track your eyes, it tracks the movement of your head. So there's a program called Enable Viacam that will allow you to use a webcam on your computer. It'll compare the foreground to the background of the shot. And as I move my head back and forth, it will move the mouse pointer, and then that can be used in conjunction with a switch for clicking or a technique called dwell clicking. Dwell clicking is basically you leave your mouse pointer in one spot for a few seconds, and then it will register a click there. You can set the amount of time. It might be a second, it might be half a second, so on and so forth. Now, we didn't touch on, we talked a lot about last week about platforms, operating systems. One of the things we didn't really get into is web browsers are kind of platforms in and of themselves. So there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of accessibility tools available, say, for example, in Chrome or Firefox, or, well, I think they're finally putting Explorer out to pasture, so we don't have to worry about that one anymore. But also Microsoft Edge for the few people who use that. So they have their own suite of tools built in and a lot of extensions programmed for them. I'm going to talk briefly about a couple. Chrome has a very good screen reader called Screen Reader for Chrome, so it's very on the nose. The one thing I really like about it is, one is, of course, it's free. The limitation is it only works in the Chrome web browser. You can't use it in Microsoft Word or in other programs that you're using. But instead of having to drag and select text to read, all you have to do is hover over a paragraph, and the screen reader will underline it on your screen, and then if you click, it will read it for you. So easy one-click operation. It's very quick. It's very seamless, very intuitive way of doing it. Another Chrome extension is called Just Read. So this isn't exactly a screen reader, but it is it helps you read your screen. What this does is when you click, it puts a little icon on your Chrome window. When you click it, it will take the web page that's loaded and reorganize it into one column. So all of those web pages are very busy and very complicated nowadays. And Just Read kind of takes all of that content, strips it all down into one easy to read column of text, and then with pictures and links interspersed in there. So it can really make your life a lot easier if it comes to dexterity issues and you have trouble clicking all of these targets, or if you have issues with literacy or learning disability. It can just help you really focus in on things. And that is really, so open source software, it's a very wide open market. You will find a lot of things that aren't supported anymore. It can be a little bit frustrating kind of wading through all of that to find the best tools. And then when you find a tool, you may find, as of, for example, with SteadyMouse, that a couple of years later, it's not free anymore, or it doesn't exist anymore, or it's not supported. So it'll slowly work less and less well as time goes by. Open source hardware. So open source assistive devices, you'll find a lot of things that are very easy to make. You'll find a lot of gripper aids and little dexterity aids, so things to help you hold on to things or help you grip things. You'll find a lot of little visual aids, so you'll find screens for helping you sign documents, or helping you, say, a window for reading one line at a time that would of course also double as a bookmark. A lot of things that can be made very easily on 3D printers and other technology. So that's great, but we're still not at the point where everybody has a 3D printer in their house. It's not like, it's not like a blender. So how do you get these things? Makers Making Change is a website operated by the Neil Squire Society. They are a fairly large nonprofit. And not only are they a repository for open source assistive tech, this means if we make something that I think would be useful, I can upload it on that site. People can find it, and then people can get in touch with me to ask questions about it. But they also will take requests and help coordinate people, putting somebody together with somebody who can help them make that device and deliver it to them. So you're not stuck there, here's this cool plan for something that will help me. I don't know how to use 3D printers, so I guess I'll just sort of look at it, you can get in touch with Makers Making Change, you can put in a request, and they will try and find somebody to make that device for you and arrange for it to be delivered. So they're a great organization. And let's hop back over to the demo screen for a quick second, and I'll show you some of the things that are available on Makers Making Change. So we have, so this is a device, you can fit cutlery in there, and it's got a Velcro strap so that you can hold it on your hand, and you can hold things for eating utensils and use them much more easily. So again, these very nice, innovative little designs, they don't take not a lot of moving parts, not a lot of complication, straightforward. This is a tool for opening bottles. You basically put your bottle cap in there, and you can squeeze and get a good grip on it and open it. I really like this one once I get it out of its little bag here. I won't bother. So if you can see this, you can actually take your key, put it in the middle there, and use that little screw to hold it in place. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of trying to face two directions at once. There will actually be a list of all of these things. And if there's any that aren't mentioned or aren't in the list, feel free to email us afterwards and I'll provide it to you. I do apologize for the audio. Everything's set up more or less the same. I guess it's just because I'm further away when I'm doing things over on here. I can't unmute this computer because then you'd hear me twice all the time.
Okay, yes, so you put your keys in here. I hope this is a little bit better audio-wise. You put your keys in here, you use that little screw to hold it in place. The best thing about this is you can print a few in different colors. You've got a nice big handle for using your key, and you can organize them at the same time. There are a few different devices on Makers Making Change. You can see you can put a touchscreen stylus, a pen or a pencil, or a brush, anything like that through here. You use this screw to tighten it up, and that gives you a much bigger, easier to manipulate grip. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stay over at this side and use this mic and not bother moving back and forth anymore. Hopefully people will be able to hear me better. Let's see. I did mention key guards earlier. So when I mentioned our little numeric keypad for using Windows, this actually is used by one of our participants, and he designed his own key guard. And we actually made this at the Ottawa Public Library's Imagine Space at the Centerpoint branch. This was before we had our own laser cutter. So that's just a sheet of clear acrylic. He designed it we're using, I think CorelDRAW is his program of choice. And then we cut it out of the sheet. We use some mounting tape to hold it on there. So any device you have that has buttons on it, you can make this sort of guard or shield to make it easier to use. That's a very great open source DIY sort of solution for a lot of problems. There are a lot of tools. So styluses and pointing devices are also very low tech and easy to make. I don't have one at hand, but you can make a ring that you can clip one of those to for easier use. And I mentioned earlier, reading windows, magnifying tools. For magnifying tools, you can make a frame to put a magnifying glass in. So you can make one that's easier to hold than one you buy from the store, or you can use a tool like Lockline to mount it in a place where you can see it easily, things of that nature. And of course, we talked a lot about switches earlier and how expensive they are. Makers Making Change has a few different designs for open source switches. So this is why this is one of my hobby horses. The big red switch I showed you earlier, you'll generally have to pay $60, sometimes even more, $100, a lot of money for those. And then you have to buy the adapters as well. And with Windows, you have to buy the software. Here, these cost about $5 to $10 to make. So especially if you're using more than one of them, you can get a lot of benefit from the open source movement, and Makers Making Change will help you make these and get them if you need them. And they are completely compatible with the Xbox Adaptive Controller or any of the other adapters that you would need for switch scanning on your device. So custom devices. Here's a quick couple that we made here. I think I'm running short on time. I think I kind of went off script a little bit. This is a cup holder that we made for one of our participants. We buy a travel mug that gets glued into this part. And these two pieces are actually held together by magnets. In each of these, you basically 3D print it with a hole in it. When you get up to that level, you can drop a magnet in there and then print the rest of the device over. So put your cup in there, it slots in nice and strong. And then you can turn it around, you can do whatever you need, and it's not going anywhere. One of our program participants uses a PlayStation controller for most of his AAC needs. So it was a very quick little project to make a nice little custom design holder. This is shaped for that device. It fits right in there. And then he has Velcro on the bottom so we can attach it to the tray of his wheelchair. We've done a couple of little software devices. I'm not going to mess with our setup to try and demo them at this point. I think we've had enough technical difficulties today that I don't want to invite anything else. But as a quick example, we made a set of crosshairs that appears on your screen that always points to where the mouse is. So a line from the left side and a line from the top of the screen that always go to the location of the cursor. That might not be, there might not be as much of a need for that nowadays because, as I said, Windows has changed its mouse cursor options where you can now make it quite large and pick any color you want for it. So there'll be fewer people who have trouble seeing their mouse pointer. But in that case, that program is there. We have another participant who uses only one button as an input device for his computer. And he, of course, needs access to left click and right click. He can only left click. So we made a menu that when he holds down his left click button will pop up and give him a lot of options, such as keyboard shortcuts like copy and paste, specific keyboard commands for programs that he uses, like CorelDRAW, like Tinkercad, which is a tool for making 3D printable objects, and different functions like that. It more or less replaces the menu that you see when you right-click on your computer and gives you access to it with only one button. All right, I'm done with the demo window, so I'm going to come back over to my notes.
All right, so yeah, custom work. So we only demoed a couple of custom jobs that we have done because generally we try and avoid doing them. Mainly because they take a long time and they will often cost more money. But if nothing else does, and if nothing else will do and you need custom work, there are two avenues that I would recommend approaching. The first one, we're going to look at the University of Ottawa. They offer a product design course. It's pretty much always going, it goes in 3-month terms. And if you contact them, the email address is on the slide, makerlab@uottawa.ca. Then when the next term starts, you'll be contacted and assigned a team of students. In some cases, more than one team of students, so you can have them sort of, you can have 2 different ideas being worked on at once. Over a 3-month period, they'll meet with you several times, They'll take your pitch for the job, what you want. They'll come back with ideas. You'll pick the idea you want, and then they'll come through making prototypes and you'll give them your feedback. And then at the end of each term, there is a design day where everyone basically shows off the work that they've done, which is also a very good avenue for seeing other devices that you may find useful. Now, I will say there is a caveat here. It's a tight time window in 3-month increments, and it's also students not, so they don't have the most experience. You may not come out of this process with a usable prototype, at least not the first time. You can actually say, well, I mean, I really want to get this done, so can I put in a gain and have another team continue it? But you may not get those results right away. The upside is that it's a very collaborative process, and especially for people that I support, they tend to find that the experience of working with the students and the contributions that they're making to the students' education is a very rewarding pursuit in and of itself. It's not a one-way street. It's not just, here we are making things for you. Here is, you are helping us. You're helping the students learn their trade while they make something for you. It's more of an equitable arrangement. So I'm a very big fan of their course. Several of our participants have really enjoyed the process of working. So then we have the Tetra Society. So this is a large nonprofit. They are North America wide, US and Canada. They are volunteer driven. So most of their volunteers are, you'll find a lot of retirees and a lot of professionals who want to give back in their spare time. You can submit a request through their website. If you want help with the request form, you can totally contact us and we'll help you with it. They will assess your needs and assign a volunteer or volunteers to come up with a plan for your device. They'll make it, they'll test it, they'll go through that process a few times until you're satisfied. And the most you're going to be charged there is for the materials. So generally speaking, so they're volunteers, so you're not charging for time. Sometimes you won't get charged anything. Sometimes there'll be generally a small charge for the materials used in making it. So they are a great resource as well, and I urge you to check out their website. And then of course there's us. So Assistive Tech Outreach is a paid service that we offer, but the consultation, that initial talk about it, is free. If you meet with us and we talk for 15 minutes and I say, oh, you should, I'm going to recommend you go check out Tetra, or this is on the market, this might suit your needs, and then that's all we do. We're not going to charge you anything. If you want to stick with us and go through a program of trying things and everything like that, then we'd have to talk about it. But we will talk about retail products, open source products, and custom jobs, and help you figure out which of those avenues is going to give you the results that you need. Once the pandemic is over and our program is open again, we'll also give you the opportunity to come here and test things in a supported environment as you sort of gain that independence. What happens a lot of the time, wow, I'm really gonna have to stop talking soon. Last point, a lot of the time what's gonna happen is you'll test something with a professional, with an OT in a lab or something like that, and it'll work great. And then that same device, when you're home and you don't have somebody there helping you, will be much harder to use. So our environment is a place where you can sort of gradually use that device with less support. We're there when you need us, and gain your independence before you're using it, before you're flying solo. Okay, let's go to questions, because this did run a fair bit longer than I had originally planned. Let us see. Yeah, so again, apologies about the audio. I did mention a lot of gaming equipment. Basically, most gaming equipment for a Windows device can be modified to send Windows commands. That Joy to Key program I mentioned, all that does is accept inputs from game controllers and translate them into Windows commands. So that will work with an Xbox controller. It'll work with any controller that's made for Windows. There is an extra step there if somebody wants to use a PlayStation controller, because there's a different program you have to use instead of Joy to Key that tricks the computer into thinking that it's an Xbox controller. But yes, if you find a gaming peripheral that's made for Windows that works, that Windows understands the inputs from it, you can use that. You can definitely make those modifications. Mobile devices, I believe it's the case. I'd actually have to, there may be some case-by-case things where there'd need to be some work done, a little bit of research. But I really think the Xbox Adaptive Controller is going to be a huge, huge turning point. Because there just needs to be a little bit of work done on the Windows side of things, the software that can accept and interpret those commands to give you a bit of help for assistive purposes. But so much can be done there as far as, because you can basically take a bunch of different switches, a bunch of different joysticks, all that sort of stuff, plug it into the Xbox controller, and then run it from there through Windows. More about wireless chargers. Yeah, so basically the device that you buy when you're shopping will have listed as a feature wireless charging if it has it. So some devices, so for example, my own phone does not have wireless charging. I really regret actually not getting one that does when last time I changed over, because that's my own charger there, and I really, really loved being able to just put my phone down at night and not worry about if I pick up my phone in the middle of the night, yanking the cord and so on and so forth. Is there anything specific you need to know about wireless chargers, or? Because really, I mean, it really is that simple. You put your device on it and it charges. They'll generally be sold with a feature where something will light up or make a noise so that you know it's charging. And once it's on there, you can just sort of forget about it. An opportunity for the open source side of things is I considered for somebody at one point, they ended up not needing it, but making a frame, 3D printing it, having the wireless charger slot into it so that when you put your device in that frame, it's always in the right position to charge.
Okay,
So,
hi, it's Corinne.
Hi, Corinne.
Asking about the wireless chargers. It's just that it's based on the device. So if you have an iPad versus a tablet versus a phone, do you need different wireless chargers?
No, no, generally speaking. Sometimes things will be proprietary. I don't know this for a fact, but it wouldn't surprise me if Apple did something like where if you buy a wireless charger for an iPad, it has to be made by Apple. So I can't say that for sure with their devices, but the company that made the but basically it's, for the most part, it's one company makes the wireless charger and then sells the hardware that's compatible with it to the companies that make devices.
Okay.
So
Okay.
on the Android side of things, at least, there is, I can't remember the name of the protocol. Let's see. Yeah, I'm probably not going to find it in the time, but there's basically that company sort of has a name where most wireless devices will be compatible with it.
Okay, Steve, at the very first session, because there have been 3 parts here, you talked about putting requirements together and then coming to you to have some advice on this. So do I just email you
Certainly.
and then start that way? Because I have 2 people that have very different requirements. So is that the way to go?
Yeah, no, you can definitely send me an email. And
Okay.
so as I said, we'll set up kind of our own Zoom thing to do a consultation where we'll get an overview. And then if I recommend that you're working with us, then that would be basically, we'd be talking about the paid services that we offer and we see what can be done there. If it's something that I can just make a quick recommendation for and you're out the door, then that's going to be that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thanks. These sessions have been very valuable. Thank you.
Very happy to hear that. I'm glad.
Well, I guess that's it if there are no more questions. Thank you very, very much, everybody, for attending this session. I'd like to thank Steve very much for this very interesting and informative presentation. And I want to remind you that this session has been recorded and will appear on the library's YouTube channel in a few weeks. I would also like to let you know that you will receive a follow-up email from Eventbrite with links to some of the important resources, including links to the PDF of Steve's presentation, as well as links to a lot of the organizations that he's mentioned. For those of you attending our regular tech cafes, I would like to let you know that due to circumstances beyond our control, Monday's session has had to be postponed. Our next tech cafe will be Monday, June 7th, when Lawrence Patterson will be here to talk about how to reduce the anxiety of managing your passwords using numbers and password phrasing. Please see our website for a listing of all of our upcoming tech cafes. So thank you all again for attending today's presentation, and goodbye for now.